Hi, I'm Gian Lombeyda, and you're listening to the LACHSA Masterclass podcast. Today we are joined by the incredible Beth Hubbard, an award-winning producer and philanthropist who founded Bright Idea Entertainment. Her long list of accomplished works include Summer of Soul, Bull Durham, Almost Famous, Power of the Dog, and most recently, Citizen Ash. While her work on Summer of Soul garnered an Academy Award for Best Documentary and a Grammy Award for Best Music Film, her films have received numerous awards and been featured across many film festivals, including but not limited to Sundance, the Venice Film Festival, and the Chicago International Film Festival. So without further ado, welcome, Miss Hubbard. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing okay, Good. A lot of film sets going on, so working through it.
Okay, good.
So to start it off, when did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker and a producer too?
Well, I started off in theater, so I thought movies were fake, and I wasn't sure until actually it occurred to me. So I worked on a movie called Weeds, which was a Nick Nolte film that was filming in my hometown in Durham, North Carolina, and I didn't know anything about film. It was my first time. I was just taking these people to different locations they could use as sets. And I sort of liked, I liked the producers. I thought it was kind of fun. It felt like kind of a family vibe. But then they said, well, why don't you go to our next location? And I was like, oh, sure, where's that? They said, oh, Joliet, Illinois. And I was like, oh, cool. And I said, oh, well, and they said, yeah, you can just work for the casting director, because at that point I was floating around from department to department. And so we got to Joliet, and there was nothing in Joliet but a huge prison called Stateville Penitentiary. And that's where we were filming. And there was something about being in that prison and filming live there that was like extremely intriguing, and it reminded me a lot of theater. It was actually about a guy who did theater in prisons. That's who Nick Nolte played. So it was kind of like this theatrical kind of hybrid thing. And then we got locked in. Then our assistant wardrobe slept with a prisoner, and the prisoner escaped, and they locked us down in the prison for 2 days. And we were all over CNN, and I thought, theater will never be this exciting, ever, and I'm down. So at that moment, I went out for reshoots in Los Angeles and fell in love with LA and thought it's like the other end of the country from my little hometown, and that's where I wanted to be. So it's kind of during that film that I decided that I really wanted to stay in film.
Very nice. That's quite the story to start off your career, for sure.
Yeah.
So how did you get started with the Mount Company, and what was working on Bull Durham like? How did your location manager work influence your style of work now as a producer too?
So that job that I said I got in LA, I went out and I just became an intern, and I got it because someone actually in my family knew Tom Mount, and he was originally from Durham, North Carolina. And so I went out and worked for him as an unpaid intern, never saw him. But they realized that the night that Bull Durham was greenlit by Orion was the same night that Kevin Costner's new film was premiering. And because that premiere went really well, that was a movie called No Way Out. Because that went really, really well, we got greenlit that night. And the next day I came into work and they said, we're shipping you back to your hometown for 8 months because we need somebody who knows that place. I said, this is vaguely familiar. I'm having like Groundhog Day. And I went back to my hometown for 8 months. And I was saying to the documentary class just now, the thing about being a location manager, at first you feel like you're everybody's dog. Like you're just like, You got to be there before everybody. You got to wait till everybody goes. You're the last to leave. The great news is that if you look at the flip side of that, you are exposed to every single department. You are working with every single department head. If you're doing it the right way and you're doing a good job, they actually find you super dependable and they begin to find you super valuable. And then all of a sudden you have a personal relationship with everybody from the director to the production designer, because everything depends on the location, right? And so for me, it was an incredible job. And really, I learned so much about filmmaking in general from the beginning to the end and all the departments in between through working as location manager.
Very nice. And I'm sure that must have led straight to being a producer too. Like that was the perfect, more or less.
So I then went into creative development because I really wanted to learn about story, because I was super interested in story. And so I went into the development department at the Mount Company after being in the production department. And slowly but surely started to read a lot, which I never was a big reader. But I got into I thought, really tapping into the knowledge that Tom Mount had about film screenwriting. He's a master at story. He's just a master. And he knows how to pick them. He knows how to develop them. And so as a result, I really wanted to glean as much information and as I could and knowledge as I could. And so I went into development, and then I sort of had a balance between the two. And then I started working with Sean Penn, and as a first-time filmmaker, he was just, he knew how to direct. As an actor, he knew so much about directing already because he had been around so many directors and really good directors that he'd gleaned a lot of knowledge as well. So that was a great transition, and then I went out on my own, started producing independently.
Very nice. So on that topic, a few years after Bull Durham, you formed your independent production company, Bright Idea Entertainment. So what pushed you to create it, and what was that process like?
Well, I just decided that I wanted a little bit more control over my career than working for someone else. And I also met at the time, my future husband, and he was a manager, and we thought, he wanted to make sort of the same movies I wanted to make. And one of them was a movie called Ritual with the great Clarence Williams III and Denise Nicholas, and it was based on a play, and his client wrote the play, and it had won a bunch of NAACP Image Awards, and his brother was a child actor and had starred in it, and it was an amazing play. And so we sort of bonded over that, and that was our first feature. We made it for $258,000 and got it a distribution deal, and it did very well, and we were sort of off to the races from there.
Very nice, very nice. So in our department especially, we're very much focused on narrative work. So that's why having a documentary perspective is really, really nice, because there are so many people in our department that do want to go into that style of work as well. But we don't have as much exposure to that. So kind of on behalf of us, what influenced you to specifically start working on documentaries? And how did you get into that?
So I had left the business. Mm-hmm. My mother had gotten extremely ill and eventually passed away. In the middle of that, my nephew was a super uber talented music producer, singer, songwriter, rapper. And it took him 2 days to write a song, and it took me 2 years to make a movie. And I said, I need a break. So I went with the easy way, and I started managing my nephew, and I did that for 5 years. And then it got to be a little bit of it got to be a little bit lateral in the management part of it, and I wanted I guess I really wanted to be able to make something and not wait around for somebody to tell me I could make it. And with documentaries, the beauty of it is you can start to make your film yourself. And then it will unfold. It may turn into a very different film, but you can start to make it and raise money in increments. And when I realized that I could do that, and I started doing it, and it was effective, to me, it was just so empowering. It really was, because I wasn't waiting around with a script for an actor to say yes or a director to say yes. I could just start shooting stuff, and that's really what I wanted to do. And so, obviously, I'm not a director. I don't claim to be a director at all, but in the documentary world, a producer can actually kind of push things along a lot easier than they can in a narrative world a lot of the time.
Yeah. I'm sure the individuality makes it a lot more liberating, for sure.
Yeah.
But there are restrictions as well. So I was wondering, for instance, how do life rights work in the documentary business, and what are the challenges with that?
Well, I've made movies that have been narratives and have been life rights situations. Life rights are a very particular business, because you're basically, well, first of all, it's interesting because what people don't realize is if someone has passed away, right, there's an estate normally. And people always say, oh, I'm going to go to that estate and I'm going to get the life rights. There are no life rights. What it is the right to have access to the estate, whatever the estate owns, whatever the estate holds. If someone, and that's a big misnomer in the world today. People don't understand that that's actually the way it is. If somebody is alive and you go to get their life rights, it's challenging because you're putting a price on, or an option and a ceiling and a floor is eventually the rights to tell their life story. And that's a big responsibility in my book. So it's sensitive. It sometimes can take years. Is it worth that for the person to go through? Because there's a lot of challenges to making a movie about yourself, and being the subject of a movie. Is it... you have to really look and see if that film can sort of stand the test of time and is compelling enough to go through what it is to get life rights. And that, I think you have to not only answer for yourself, you have to answer that for the person. Because the person is the one that's going to be up there on the screen and everything is going to be exposed about, right? And I think sometimes people look at somebody famous and they think, oh, yes, this is what we have to do. And they get all wrapped up in the process of getting those rights. Is the story that compelling? Is it relevant? Why now? All those questions that you need to ask. You have to ask before you ask that person for their rights. That's in my book. You have to go all the way down to seeing the film in the theater because you're about to take a journey with somebody and they may not like a lot of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Has there either been someone that you've really wanted to collaborate with or someone's story you've really wanted to tell for a while?
Well, I'm in the midst of making a short on a woman named Bessie Stringfield, who was the first black woman to ever travel the United States on a motorcycle. She did it at 19 in the middle of Jim Crow, and she was chased by the KKK and white policemen. She slept in ditches and behind chicken coops. She carried a .38. She never used it. She had 6 husbands. Only 3 were black. She owned 27 Harley Davidsons. She became the first woman to ever be president of a motorcycle club under the charter and have a charter under the American Motorcycle Association. She was a woman who was abandoned very early on a street corner in Boston. But what happened was she lived her dream. And I believe if there's a message anyone could supply us that we need right now, it's never ask permission to live your dream.
For sure. We all need that right now.
Yeah.
That's quite the story.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us when it's coming out?
Yeah. Well, we're in production right now on it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll be looking out for that.
Yeah.
So, a few years ago, Summer of Soul was incredible. Won a lot of awards, and I was wondering what it was like to be a part of that, and such a big part of that as well.
Yeah. I worked on that project 12 years. A lot happened in my life, and a lot happened in that project's life. But it changed my life in a lot of ways. Seeing those 39 hours of amazing artists that I had just were enamored by, Mahalia Jackson, Mavis Staples, Stevie Wonder. It's priceless material. And I learned a tremendous amount about sort of not only storytelling through the work of Questlove and Josh Pearson, the editor, but also about, film and politics. There was a lot of politics. And, that's just part of the business. And so you learn to roll with it. And you glean whatever you can. It was really important to be a part of an important film, but also an important Academy Award run of a film. It was just priceless experience. And I've taken that experience on into my other projects. It's an ode to Harlem. I feel incredibly grateful to all those artists, to Hal Tolchin for capturing that when nobody else wanted to. And it's just great to be part of raising a piece of Black history.
Mm-hmm. And I thank you for helping and sharing that, because it's meant so much to so many people, not just us. So
yeah.
Taking a little bit of a shift in gears, you've worked on multiple shows along with features and documentaries like the Zula Patrol and Almost Famous. What was the major differences between feature and TV work, and do you prefer either more?
That's a good question. I prefer them for different reasons. I'm working on an animation show now. I'm writing the first season, and it's an adult. That was not adult, and that was not my show. I ran it, and I appreciated it because, 42 episodes is a lot of episodes, and I think we did a really good job of teaching science education. We really did. And so animation especially is just such a fun medium, and you don't have to listen to actors complain a lot.
That's so true.
So we like that.
Mm-hmm.
The one I'm writing now is a dark comedy. It's like Ozark with animals. Yeah. And but with humor as well, dark humor. And I love the process of making multiple episodes. It's just a lot of fun. Almost Famous, unfortunately, due to the fact that the network got into a huge fight with the partners they put us with, we didn't get to do a lot of them. But that was the beginning of reality. I mean, that was right in the middle of when reality was starting to get super hot. And I just shot I shot a pilot just now about tattoos and music and the intersection of those two art forms. And I just love the idea. We will get picked up. This is a great show, and I just love the idea of doing it because there's a service piece to the show. There's a service element. We give something to someone and we change their life. And when I say we change their life, the process and what happens change their lives. And we just sort of raise the platform to do that. And I think that's just, if we could do that on multiple levels and multiple times, that would be an amazing thing to do for people.
For sure. And on that topic, you do give back to the community a lot, not only through your films, but through the Mary Duke Biddle Trent Siemens Foundation. I hope I
Those
said
were
it right.
all my mother's names.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she had 5.
Wow.
It was a mouthful.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Ridiculous. So Mary Duke Biddle Trent Siemens Foundation was a foundation founded by my mother. My mother was a philanthropist. When I took it over, she was still alive. It was mainly an arts foundation and visual art. We owned a lot of visual arts. There are other family foundations, and I wanted to do something that I thought was in her name that she would want, which is service. She was very much about service to other people, the individual, the cause, the this, the that. And so what we've done is we are reorganizing, and we sold most of the art in at auction during the pandemic, of all things, and increased our corpus. And so we are now going to take a page out of the MacArthur Foundation. We're going to give it's really social justice in art awards, but it will have one of those, and they'll be really social justice awards. So it's to individuals or organizations that are of service to their communities in North and South Carolina. And we'll give 3 rather large awards out, certainly awards that will be effective to who they go to, and we'll do that once a year, and there'll be 3 of them. And I think it's really an ode to my mother and her brother, who both just didn't have to do service. They chose to do service, and it helped them really to be, I think, happier people.
And that's so important, especially with the power of film and the power of art, to be able to use that power to change the world, to honor the people around us, to honor our family, like you're saying. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot today, there are a lot of people that would love to convince a lot of other people that art is frivolous, that it is for the woke, and it is for the liberal, and they'd like to compartmentalize it. And the fact is that it is inherent to our well-being. And it is a lot of the way that people work with the trauma of their past and their present. And that's how art is created most of the time. And people don't really understand that. And there are a lot of people that want to shut that down so that they can marginalize a lot of people. And it's unfortunate, but we just have to keep doing what we're doing.
Speaking of change, what do you think about the lack of diversity in the film industry? And in what ways have you seen people effectively trying to make a change to that? I know you have, for sure, and through your work.
I mean, listen. How do I say this and be politically correct? I have fought a very long time for diversity in filmmaking, not because I was like, oh, I'm going to fight for diversity in filmmaking. It's like, no, people have the right to tell their own stories, all this other stuff. And I'm just glad to see that it's happening now. And, listen, in a lot of ways, there are a lot of white executives that are running around in fear not to do it because they think they're going to get canceled. And that's a lot of what's motivating them. Well, that's okay too. Because as long as it's happening, as long as that chance is happening, I don't think there's enough of it happening. I don't think there are enough women in the room. I don't think there are enough Black people, Latino people, LGBTQ, none of it. It's still very much what it's always been. And that doesn't mean that there isn't hope, and there is enough room at the table. A lot of people don't want to believe that, or want others to believe it, because they don't. Inherently, people don't think there's enough at the table or enough room. That's why they're paranoid. That's why they do a lot of the things they do, is out of paranoia and out of fear and out of abandonment and out of lack of self-worth. And that's not good enough. It's just not good enough.
For sure. And if you feel comfortable answering, as a woman in the film industry, have you personally faced any discrimination or mistreatment? And if so, how did this affect you? What would you like to see? How would you like to see us make change as the next generation of filmmakers?
I don't think people... Yes. The answer is yes. I have been discriminated against. And I'm a white woman. And you know what? I'm normally the only woman in the room in a lot of places I go still in this business. And in a lot of...
statistics say it's like 78.9% male or something like that. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous. The other part of it is that I think the way, and I don't mean this as weakness, but I think the way that it's going to get better and the way that everybody's going to come to the table is to listen. And I don't think in Hollywood a lot of people know how to listen. They just don't. They don't want to listen. They're so busy trying to tell you how great they are. And it's too bad, because they miss the magic. They really miss the magic. And a lot of it, again, comes from conditioning. And a lot of people believe they still have to step all over people to get to where they think they want to be. And then they get there and there's nobody else around. And it's like, what happened? Well, you stepped on a lot of motherfuckers and they don't want to be around you anymore. You're not very pleasant. That happens a lot. And I think what I would love to see is, this is not, you guys didn't create any of this bullshit that's happening. You didn't ask for 50 whatever white men in Washington to make all the decisions for you as a government. Fuck that. If you guys can figure out a way to get that to change, I'll do anything to support that. Because you didn't burn your planet up, and I feel an incredible guilt about that. I'm not saying I did a lot, but inherently, was I a part of some version of that? Maybe so. So I'd love you guys to figure out a way to come together and listen to each other. Not think you've got to not listen to each other, because you really do, and that's what you guys could teach us. And just go for that. Go for the inclusion. And because I find, and also the one other thing I would say is, there's a lot in whatever you do every day. Whether that's opening a door for somebody, or somebody saying that's your superior, go get my dry cleaning. What if you were the only person who knew where to go get that and how to go get it? And if you could find the positive and the value in that while you're doing it, what if there was value, as opposed to, I'm not going to do that, that's below me, da-da-da-da-da. I found value in all of it. I hated it, but I found value, and that's the way I met Ron Howard and Peter Jackson. Nobody knew how to do the printer in Columbia Pictures, which is now Sony. I did, and I hated that fucking printer. But then I realized I was the only person after hours that knew how to work it. Guess who was calling and knocking on my door? Major directors. So I think it's all how you look at something, and looking at something and realizing what you could not only get out of it, but how you can be of service to another. So those are my three things: service to another, learning value in every single thing, and listening, I would say, are the three things.
Sage advice, for sure. We'll keep those in mind, for sure. Were there any films that you've worked on that you specifically feel proud of based on their diversity, or maybe just what you've worked on?
Summer of Soul, definitely. Reese Taylor, most definitely. Arthur, most definitely. A movie called 9 Days, which was really amazing, which was out 3 years ago. Unfortunately, got sort of swallowed up by the pandemic, but a really good movie with Zazie Beetz and Skarsgård and oh my God, I'm blanking on the other people in it. But
it's been a long day already.
Yeah, no. But there are definitely those movies that haven't been great. But I just feel lucky to be a part of any of it and be doing what I want to do in life,
Definitely. And we all hope to be there someday, too.
You're doing it right now.
As more of a fun question, as a producer, I'm sure you've collaborated with so many people around the world, and you're already talking about how you've traveled so much around the States and I'm sure around the world. So what's your favorite place you've been to, and maybe your favorite food you've eaten?
Oh, with film.
Mm-hmm.
With film. Well,
or it could be outside too.
Yeah, I mean, Italy's my favorite country in the world, for sure.
Same for me.
Yeah,
yeah. Sure. And I'm not even Italian. So.
Oh my God, I'm not either. But long story. But I spent a lot of time there growing up. But I would say I saw this country in just a super interesting way through the documentaries I've made, and I think it's helped me be more okay, this is going to sound weird, be more inclusive of my own race, to be honest, and understanding the complications of this country. I definitely enjoy my hometown more than I ever did. And I think, listen, I love New York City. I kind of grew up there, kind of spent a lot of time there on Arthur. Love that place. I think you can find something kind of great about everywhere. I am excited because one of my new projects will take me outside this country, so I'm super excited about that. Yeah. So
looking forward to that too.
Yeah.
Another out of nowhere question. What's the craziest, most unexpected thing that's happened on set?
Oh, I think what I told you about Stateville Penitentiary, getting locked down and a prisoner escaping on a scissor lift. We checked him in at 8 a.m. that morning. Because he had been sleeping with the assistant wardrobe person. He knew where the wardrobe trailer was. He went in there. He changed clothes. He went into the makeup trailer. He shaved his beard and his mustache. He went into the sound van. He got a walkie-talkie and put a raincoat on and pretended to be a PA. And it was a huge crew. And he literally, when we went out to do the scissor lift shots from outside of the penitentiary wall, shooting into the whole, back then there weren't drones. So we did these big scissor lift shots. He literally had his girlfriend waiting in a car a mile away, and he literally got in the van and pretended to get on the scissor lift, escaped around the corner, and she was waiting, and he got away, and he was gone for 3 days, and they locked us in because they all thought we had something to do with it. That's the crazy. I can't top that.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And one last, more fun one. Whether it be from your hometown or from elsewhere, what's your favorite food that you've eaten in or out of set?
Oh my God. I mean, I'm a big burger person. So wherever I go, I eat their burgers and their fries.
Have they ever given you any good burgers on set? Or no?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely Bull Durham had great burgers, for sure. But I think the best burger I ever ate was in Florida last year in not crazy about the state, but right now, but in Orlando. I ate one of the best burgers I've ever had. Yeah.
Florida burgers, okay.
Who knew?
Put that on my bucket list. So, now as we're approaching the end, this has been amazing, but we ask this question to our guests every time before ending the interview.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and give your teenage self a piece of advice, what would you tell yourself? It's a hard question.
You know, there's a lot I would tell her. I think I would tell her to be easier on herself. I was terribly hard on myself at that age for a lot of different trauma reasons. And also to keep dreaming big. Because without meeting my husband, my ex-husband now, I would have never thought what I'm doing was ever possible. But it also shows you that if you keep saying yes to things, if you keep moving forward, if you keep saying yes, and maybe that's what I would say to her, is keep saying yes. Not the shit you know isn't good for you, like weed and whatever. But I'm talking about you keep saying yes to opportunities, even if you're scared to do it, even if you don't want to do it. There's a lot of, you just don't know what could happen as a result.
Thank you. Again, sage advice. This has been amazing.
Okay, good.
I've personally learned so much, and I'm sure you all have over the air. So I thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you, and see you next time on the LACHSA Masterclass podcast.